these difficult times, they could define us. These difficult times can diminish us, or these difficult times, they could develop us. We decide. So some choices that we're working with clients, like little choices that they could make to be able to get over fear, to mitigate fear. So they're not in that fight or flight where, they're more susceptible to colds, to flus, to viruses. Because if you're, chronic stress, we talk about how it shrinks the human brain, and there's different things that people could do to manage and cope with stress.
Obviously, you've worked with some of the most successful people walking around on planet Earth and helping a lot of everyday folks as well, really transforming their mindset, their ability to read faster, their ability to think faster and more clearly, and the list goes on and on. But you also have a lot of experience with helping people to address their fear. And so let's dive into that. So we know that this is the current circumstances we're dealing with. So what are some of the things people can actually do to help to abate fear and press forward?
When we're in our survival brain, we're held hostage from our rational brain, our ability to make good decisions, our ability to see things clearly. And people know that, right? Media knows that. Politicians, they know that. And we're not going to make very, solid choices in our life when we're in that survival place. When we're in fear, everything's going for just be able to live, right? And so we get irrational. We start hoarding toilet paper. We start doing things that just, start, seeing people through a different lens. Which could be a big challenge, and even if outside of just the current world events, when people have fear, in Limitless, I talk about how limits are learned, and fear is a limit, right? It's a constraint. There's a border, some kind of boundary that we're bumping up against, and it could be, anxiety around taking a test. It could be fear of public speaking. It could be a fear of, starting a business, or getting into a committed relationships, where fear holds us back. And so in Limitless, I have a quote from a French philosopher, and he says, "Life is the C between B and D." And people are thinking I'm speaking in code, but B stands for birth, D stands for death, life, C stands for choice. I really do believe that these difficult times, they could define us. These difficult times can diminish us, or these difficult times, they could develop us. We decide. So some choices that we're working with clients, like little choices that they could make to be able to get over fear, to mitigate fear. So they're not in that fight or flight, where, like you mentioned, psychoneuroimmunology, where, they're more susceptible to colds, to flus, to viruses. Because if you're, chronic stress, we talk about how it shrinks the human brain, and there's different things that people could do to manage and cope with stress. Chronic fear, it's a big challenge. And so how do we manage it, right? And so some choices, first of all, I have this global, I think symbols are very powerful in the human psyche. I think metaphors are a wonderful way to learn. Metaphors are kind of a shortcut. When you're comparing something you don't know to something that you do know, all of a sudden, you make a connection that wasn't there before. So the metaphor I'm using is one of big transformation is that of a butterfly, right? It's very simple. And a lot of people, while the beauty is in the butterfly, the growth happens in the cocoon. And a lot of people feel like they're in a cocoon, the past couple of years. They might be physically distancing themselves, and they might be alone. They might be alone with their thoughts. They might be, working at home or living at work. They don't know, or their kids are in and out of school. They're alone with their doubts. They might be feeling alone, right? Mental health is, challenges are on the rise. And so, while you're in this cocoon, how do you come out of it? Because while the beauty is in the butterfly, the growth happens in the cocoon, right? And so it's a struggle to be able to get out, that you develop strength and commitment, character, and the things that, capabilities. And so to be able to soar to new heights. So here are 5 or 6 things that choices that they can make, going back to the decisions, and we could riff on this. With your listeners on what they could do to just empower themselves, so they could have their sense of agency back, where they're not giving away, this kind of where they feel like they're a victim and this is happening to them, where they could, as you talk about, control the controllables. So I'll make them easy. I'll make them all C's. All right. So during this time is a wonderful time first to get clarity, right? Clarity is power. And because it's really hard to stop somebody who knows where they're going and why they're going there. You know what I mean? But a lot of people, like, we're living, there are forces out there that try to confuse you with with their messages, with manipulation of data, and a confused mind doesn't do anything, right? So you're immobilized, right? Just like what fear could lead to, freezing or fleeing, right? And so clarity, and so clarifying questions. I believe questions are the answer. They're an amazing tool that we could use. One question is something simple like, just start basic. Solitude is a wonderful time for self-reflection. And so maybe it's asking yourself, what's most important to me in life? What's most important to me in my health? What's most important to me in my career? Zero-based thinking. If I was to start over, like, what's really important to me in my security and my personal freedoms and the things that matter to me most. I always tell people it's not just time management, it's priority management. That the most important thing is to keep the most important thing, right? And so what is most important to you? Maybe it is your freedom. Maybe it is growth. Maybe it is love and family. Maybe it is contribution. Maybe it is safety. Maybe it is adventure, right? So that's your North Star. Because sometimes when we're going 100 miles, as many people do, we're just burning, right? Driving that car, going really fast. We don't ask ourselves, hey, am I still going in the right direction, right? Because we just do it every single day. And we know through studies that, upwards of 40% or more of our behaviors are just habitual. They're unconscious, right? We're on autopilot. But like Dr. Stephen Covey, who wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, says, you don't want to climb the ladder of success really efficiently and get to the top and realize the ladder's leaning on the wrong wall. So the second question I would ask, besides what's most important to you in these areas, what's most important to you where you're going to live, what's most important to your kid's education, are my actions align with those values? That's the congruency and the integrity. The most fulfilled people and the happiest people, those cultivating those emotions to kind of to be able to dilute the fear that's out there, they're on purpose, right? And so a lot of people feel burnt out because of fear, because they're burning on all cylinders, and their hormones and are all out of whack. They're staying up late at night because they're on social media scrolling through all the crazies that's going on. And I would say that sometimes we don't feel burnt out because we're doing too much. Sometimes we feel exhausted and burnt out because we're doing too little of the things that really matter, the things that light us up, the things that make us come alive. And so I would really hone in on those, 4 or 5 things that are most important to us, and take some time to pause and just ask yourself, and then have this conversation with your kids, have this conversation with your significant other, find out what their values are also as well. And are we doing things every single day to kind of, to meet those things?
Yeah, I love this so much. And thank you for pointing out to have these conversations with our kids as well. Our kids are some of the people who are unfortunately struggling the most right now with this time. It's kind of a massive, big social experiment. And so finding out what is their biggest value, what's most important for them, what's their priority, and asking these clarifying questions, what's most important to their health, what's most important to their happiness. And the same thing with our significant other. And there's something healing, of course, just having these conversations, period. Yeah. And the thing about you, man, you help to bring out what's kind of rattling around in our minds to the surface so we can get a good look at it. And so, and I want to reiterate this point, that clarity. So we've got our clarity question. So it might be, what's most important to me in life? And for you, it might be your family, right? But are your actions actually demonstrating that is your biggest priority? And if not, wouldn't this be a good time to adjust to make that the reality? And same thing with our health. And when it may seem like the world has taken something away, for example, your priority with your health is working out, going to the gym, but the gyms are closed down. The parks have got the caution tape up around it. You're just they're taking away my ability to exercise and to be healthy. But this is an opportunity for us to find a way, get creative, because chances are this isn't the first time that something abnormal is going to happen in life. And so I think it also develops that skill set of resilience. This is so good, man. So clarity is number one, and it's amazing. This is so important.
Yeah. So again, we're talking about the choices. Life is a C between B and D. These are small choices, and you don't have to spend hours on this, but that's, I think part of success is just getting to know yourself. as you're evolving, through this life, whatever cycle that you happen to be in. And part of that, it could be journaling, it could be your own meditation, it could be talk therapy, right? Self-awareness really is a superpower. The second C, I would say, and in no specific order, is care. Again, something your show is all about, that self-care is not selfish. And all the things that we talk about, and it's not just eating the best, foods and optimizing your sleep, or going to getting body work done. It also is, caring. Part of self-care is realizing when you say yes to somebody or something, you're not saying no to yourself, right? And a lot of people, they're burnt out because they have too many tabs open, right? And it's still taking up a lot of space. It's requiring a lot of energy. People are overcommitting all the time to things that they can't fulfill on. And so there's a kind of a breach with your own commitments and your own trust with yourself. I would also say that, part of self-care is making the choice when you say yes to something, like all that craziness that, that's out there. Like it's interesting. Like a lot of us are on social media, right? And there's an algorithm to social media, clearly. And one of the algorithms is whatever you engage with, you get more of, right? So if you just happen to be really into, we mentioned this before, but cat videos or whatever, that you just engage, like, share, comment, watch all the cat videos, then they're going to show you a lot more cat videos. And that's going to be your perception. That's going to be your news feed. Well, your mind has a similar algorithm. Whatever you're consistently engaging with, they're going to show you more of. And, media marketing knows this. They, if it bleeds, it leads. If something is threatening, your part of your brain, let's say the amygdala gets, hijacked, and you have to pay attention because that's your survival. So you have to pay attention to what's dark, threatening, and scary. And the challenge is, if that's what you're engaging with, just like the cat videos, they're going to show you more of it. Your mind is going to see, literally in your observation, in your perception, more of that darkness, scariness, the threatening things, because that's what you're engaging with. You're training your nervous system, saying this is important. And the challenge, though, is that leaves you very little bandwidth for hope. That leaves you very little bandwidth for opportunity. That leaves you very small bandwidth for solutions. For the things, leaves you less bandwidth for gratitude, the things you can be grateful for. And so just a reminder with care, part of it is just, it's like self-love. It's falling in love with that person in the mirror that's been through so much, but is still standing, and making self-care a priority for you, your family, your team also as well. And that's why we're always feeding our minds with great podcasts like yourselves, with books, with great conversations and people. So and again, it could be 10 minutes, just like the other ones. It could be just like going for a 10-minute walk with your dog that day. Something that, because little by little, a little becomes a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, for me, obviously, this is like a center point. So I want to connect these together with fear. This becomes like a force field, in a sense, because you have the opportunity to train your brain to basically tune into what you care about, right? So if you're telling your brain that I care about cats and Beyonce, which is my wife's Explorer page on Instagram, then that's what you're going to see more of, But this is happening in the quote real world, whether we realize this or not. What are you tuned into? You get to demonstrate or tune your brain into, like, basically instruct your brain on what you care about. So that's very powerful. And that self-care and feeding our brains intentionally the things that provide that resilience and that self-care, that force field of positivity, is something that's within our power as well, to kind of defend us against fear.
Exactly, because a lot of there's a huge cognitive load that's spent, when we're scared or fearful, right? And it burns stress. Fear burns a lot of energy, right? A lot of brain glucose. So, you insulate yourself with, the best force field ever. So that's the second C. The third one, I would say, again, we're talking about little choices that you can make to help kind of rewire your life, your nervous system, for confidence, for courage, for peace of mind. I would say the third one is contribution. Fear is something that we all experience. And, just like we talk about in Limitless, that limits are learned, a lot of fears are learned, right? Like they say, somebody told me that, and I don't know if this is true, but the two things, like the two natural born fears that we have, fear of falling and fear of loud noises. Now, I don't know if that's accurate, but pretty much we could all accept that most of the other fears are learned. The fear of public speaking is not something like we're born with, right? It's something that we learned. And for me, that was one of my big fears, which is ironic because that's all I do, for a living. And so what I would say is contribution, how even with me, if I have a fear of public speaking, what I think about is that one person in the audience that I want to contribute to. And that takes my focus and my awareness off of my own anxiety or butterflies. And I put my attention on service, contribution, and where your focus goes, that's where your energy is going. And once I do that, literally, Shawn, I'm pretty introverted, kind of pseudo really shy because of my learning disabilities growing up, and my traumatic brain injury. I was very self-conscious. My superpower was hiding growing up. That was really good. We were talking about
hide and seek. Where the hell is Jim?
Yeah, exactly. I would sit behind the tall kid in class. I would always shrink down. I'd be invisible boy, right? Like I'd be able to, because I never had the answers. And I didn't understand what people were talking about in school. I didn't want to be picked for sports because I don't want to I had a fear of just messing up and making mistakes and letting people down, right? Fears that we take on into adulthood. And so, I would say that when it comes to contribution, it focuses your energy on service, right? I think we learn so we could earn, so we could return. We donated 100% of the proceeds to Limitless to charity, hundreds of thousands of dollars to build schools for children in need in Kenya, Guatemala, Ghana, to Alzheimer's research for women. And as we know that women are twice as likely to experience Alzheimer's than men. In memory of my grandmother, who I lost when I was going through my learning difficulties. But going back to contribution, I feel like that's why we're here. Everything in nature, it has to grow, but it also has to give, right? And otherwise it's eliminated. And that I think that's important. And you don't give to get, you give because it's who you are. I think contribution is one of the antidotes to fear. And it doesn't have to be huge. It could be making food for frontline workers. It could be contacting a neighbor that might be alone, right? And just little things like that make a difference.
Yeah. Man, I love this. That's so powerful because I don't know why I didn't even think of this, that you would bring this one up, because fear has a tendency to make us withdraw. And if we intentionally put forth contribution, right, it is an antidote. It's the opposite of what fear drives us to do. That's really remarkable, Jim.
So the question here would be how can you take some of your time, your talent, your treasure to make a difference? I think, when we're making a difference, it's something that gives us fulfillment, it gives us joy. And again, these are emotions that could drown out the fear and the negative self-talk and, all those sensations where we feel immobilized. It gives us our power back again. A lot of this conversation is about getting your agency back, because when we're in fear, we feel like we're at the effect. We feel like we're a thermometer. A thermometer just reacts to the environment. And as human beings, sometimes we react to the environment. We react to politics, react to what's going on in the world, the economy, how people treat us. But in actuality, the strongest, most successful, happiest, fulfilled people, the ones that have joy, they identify more with the thermostat. The thermostat doesn't react to the environment. It gauges. So you be a thermostat, gauge, know what's going on in the world, right? But then, you set a temperature and the environment reacts to you. Right. And you set a goal, you set a vision for what you want to do, a mission, how you want to disrupt things and make things better, and then make it the way you see it. So that's what I would say is contribution. And then a couple more, and I'll make them C's because I'm kind of OCD about that. The fourth one I would say is how about creativity? This is a nice time to be able to be. I believe the future belongs to the creators. Even before, what's going on, a lot of jobs, they were going to outsource to other countries. They were going to machines. They're going to they're being automated. They're going to artificial intelligence. And, I believe the things that aren't going to be outsourced to a machine are things that are truly limitless. There is no limit to our creativity, our ability to solve problems. There's no limit to our ability to imagine and envision a better future for ourselves, and our families and future generations. There's no limit to our ability to even come together, as a community. It's interesting. Like you look through time, some of the most amazing inventions and works of art, came through difficult times. It was created during did you know it was during the Great Plague that William Shakespeare created Macbeth? He created Antony and Cleopatra during the Great Plague. It was during when they shut down London and everyone had to physically distance himself. Isaac Newton couldn't go to the university, so he went home. And the story goes he was sitting underneath a tree in his yard, and an apple fell on his head, and he created the theories of motion. He created theories of gravity. Now, I'm not saying we have to create at that level, everybody, but what's on you have a to-do list. What's on your to create list? Maybe you want to create, something, a social media campaign. Maybe you want to create a new business. Maybe you want to create, it's come up with a solution to a problem that we're facing, ourselves, and maybe create music. Maybe you want to write a book, right? But this is a wonderful time. And again, you don't spend hours on this, just 10 minutes of writing that day or something that you want to create that really lights you up.
What if somebody tells you that they're not creative?
That's a good question. I just spoke at an event yesterday, and people come to me during the break just like, Jim, I have a horrible memory, or Jim, I'm just not creative, or Jim, I'm just too old. And I always say, stop. If you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. I think, part of the nature of our work together, and so many of people who are joining us for this conversation is about transcending. That's that's one of the things we want to do together, in the world. We want to transcend. We want to end the trance, end this mass hypnosis through marketing, through media, that we're helpless, that we're not enough, that we're broken, that we need to be, saved. You know what I mean? And so this whole mindset, or if it's not hypnosis from the outside, it's self-hypnosis. It's like you said, someone saying, oh, I'm just not creative, but I don't have creativity. And here's the thing, like our words matter, they affect our brain, the languaging that we use. And going back to this, if your brain is like a supercomputer and your self-talk as a programmer will run. So if you tell yourself, I'm not creative, you will not be creative that day because you program your supercomputer not to. Same thing if you say, oh, I'm not good with names. You're not going to remember the name of the next person you meet because you're programming your computer not to do that. And so I would say one of the things to that person who says that they're not creative is take your nouns and turn them into verbs. You do not have creativity. You do creativity. Right? You do not have focus. You do focus. You do not have motivation. You do motivation. Even when it comes to fear, you do not have fear. There's a process that's going on that's making you fearful. You know what I mean? And when you could take it and turn it into a method, then you have real magic. You have real magic superpowers, meaning you don't have confidence. You're like, Jim, that's the problem. I don't have any confidence. No, you do confidence. Right? And when there's no magic pill to get out of fear, but there is a magic process. And that's really what it's about. So I would say first, monitor language, that you don't have creativity. There's a creative process. And then, we've talked about it in previous episodes on your show about different ways of getting to, these brainwave states like theta and doing this imaginary and using questions to be more creative and such. So I would say that to everybody, that limits are learned just like fear. You do not have fear. We are going through the process of creating fear, inside and then outside. And then finally, I would say, besides clarity, besides care, besides contribution and creativity, which is, again, this is a wonderful time to create. I would say the last one is, let's say, capabilities. Let's talk about that. There's that quote where it said, you're not rising to the level of other people's expectations. What you're doing is falling to the level of your training, right? Capabilities are the knowledge, the skills, abilities. And this is the thing, like, I really think that fear it's like a signpost. All emotions, when you feel love, right, you can't just let it end at an emotion, right? Those emotions lead to behaviors, right, and lead to some kind of action. And I feel like that if you ever feel fear, it's a signpost or a signal that you need to do something. Maybe it's to prepare, right? Or it's to be able to do some of the things we talked about earlier about self-care and clarity and everything. So let's say somebody has a fear of public speaking. The only reason I bring this up is because a lot of people say it's the number one fear in this country. Number two is widely reported to be fire. Number three, death. which is the old joke, right? That if you're at a funeral, most people would rather be in the coffin than the one being giving the eulogy, right? Because they have such a big fear of public speaking. But if you have a fear of public speaking, maybe it's a signal to act, to improve some capabilities, to take some, go to Toastmasters, right? To read a book on public speaking, right? To be able to practice. For me, when I was first learning to public speak, it's not the 1,000, 10,000, 30,000 people that I'm speaking to now. It used to be like these bunch of 8-year-olds, right? They're like 10 8-year-olds in the audience, and I would get so scared to talk to that class. But courage is also a muscle, just like fear. And if we always indulge in fear, that muscle gets stronger. Just like if we always indulge in distraction, we're always flexing our distraction muscles, at the cost of our own focus. Well, little things that you could do. So capabilities, what I would say is if you feel fear, there's something in psychology called the confidence-competence loop, which a lot of us are familiar with. Confidence-competence loop, that the more competent you get at something, the more confidence it gives you, right? If you don't know how to play golf and you take some golf lessons, you have some more competence, it gives you a level of confidence, and then you're going to play more, and you're probably going to get better, so you get more confidence, and it's self-replicating. So I would say everybody needs to have not only a to-do list and a to-feel list, and to create list, but also, a to-learn list. And so if you feel fear, what do you need to do to feel like that you're prepared? And I think that skills, those knowledge, those abilities will give you more courage.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love that question, because this is using this innate ability of the mind to answer any question we pose it. To just take a moment to just grab the reins of our mind just a little bit, grab the wheel, and ask, what is this fear trying to teach me? What is this fear instructing me about?
Yeah.
And we, even from that place, we could start to break down. Oftentimes it becomes an irrational thing. We can break down and identify what it really is that might be bothering us. But oftentimes it's also creating the opportunity to develop a certain capability.
Very much so.
So it could be a capability or capacity of resilience, of creativity, or of being able to perspective take to see things from different dimensions, whatever the case might be. So these are all very powerful.
So if people have a fear of money, maybe they, that's a signpost to say, hey, I need to get some financial literacy. If people have a fear of numbers, they could take something. If they have a fear of forgetting things, they could take a memory course. You know what I mean? Like there's things that the people could do. If you have a fear of, starting a relationship because they have had trauma in the past, or they're dealing with some self-esteem issues, maybe it's taking a course or reading something, and that knowledge and those skills and abilities help us to level up. I would actually add, just in the spirit of this conversation, I would add a sixth one, because I want to be really abundant here in a time of fear, potentially. What's that fear? Like what's the acronym? False evidence appearing real, right? Community. You want to get out of fear, be part of something, and that's like a hunter gatherer, right? And you have a village, and it takes a village, but people have your back, right? Like you and your community, and it's one of those things where it's just those are the people that would survive. It wasn't the lone hunter, right? And so everything kind of comes back to that. And again, fear could be a good thing, right? Now, if you have a fear, it just it could save your life, right? Being fearful of falling off of a cliff, or be able to fearful of we wear your seatbelt, you do certain things. But the challenge is irrational fear, which is happening a lot, where people know that fear is one of the most powerful ways and powerful and proven ways to manipulate people to do things they wouldn't normally do, unless their survival brain was on alert.
Yeah.
So community, people ask, that African proverb, if you want to go faster, you go alone. If you want to go further, go together, right? How do you become limitless in a limited world? We do it together, and that's the only way.
Yeah. So good. So good. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into community, because I think that this is an underutilized superpower, like especially when you're facing a larger than life villain. You get a Thanos situation.
Yeah.
It's a SARS-CoV Thanos showing up.
Yeah.
You get the Avengers together for a situation like this. You don't try and do it yourself.
Yeah.
So what can folks look to if they're feeling like, and I know a lot of folks are feeling this way, that they're kind of cut adrift. A lot of folks are having issues with their family, with their coworkers, whatever the
Yeah.
case might be, based on their sense of sovereignty
Right.
and, their own personal choices and freedoms, whatever the case might be. Or, maybe they're participating in the change that's going on, the mandates, but they just feel like, hey, I believe that everybody should be able to make their own decisions, whatever the case might be. But even going a little bit outside of the dictator type narrative, people are feeling like they're at odds with other people. So what can folks do to kind of galvanize and get together with a community of like-minded people who are not here to necessarily fight against something? Because ultimately, and I got to share this, I don't think that we're fighting against each other. I think that's the framing of the media, making us hate each other. We're really,
Divisiveness, for
yeah,
sure.
we're really
Wonderful way
fighting
to,
together against idiocy. I think that's one of the things that we're fighting against. But ultimately, we're fighting for the spirit and the souls of people, that intangible, universal, timeless thing about us, and understanding our place in all this. Right now, I think we're very short-sighted. And I think that that's what we're really fighting for. We're fighting for freedom of thought. We're fighting for human potential. So I just want to share that little nugget. But what can folks do right now to kind of cultivate and get themselves plugged into community when they might feel like they're a little bit cut adrift and alone?
yeah, I think this is a very important conversation, that if somebody's listening to this right now and they're feeling alone, if they feel isolated, if they somehow feel marginalized, it's you're not, first of all, that person's not alone, right? Because there are so many people who are feeling the same way, without a doubt. And sometimes it can be tough when we're going through trauma, or depression or an anxiety, and we all go through different stages. I think everybody is fighting a battle that no one knows about. That's why I think now more than ever, kindness is important. That kindness is a real superpower. I was saying before, is just, it's important to, if you haven't found that community or that person to be able to back you or support you or just be there, is to be that person for somebody else. So I think we always should be giving the thing that we sometimes need the most. I think also part of it has to do with acknowledging that, that it's okay to feel this way. And then, because I think self-awareness is the starting point for anything. You need to be consciously aware that something is going on. And then you need to sometimes take a little bit of courage. I saw this movie recently. I didn't really watch it because I had it in the background. It's with Matt Damon. It was We Bought a Zoo. You see this movie? But there's this quote, this line that just kind of struck me when I was listening to it. Something like, all you need is 20 seconds of insane courage, and I promise you, something amazing and profound will come from it. And so sometimes knowing that asking for help is not a sign of weakness. That certainly it's certainly a sign of courage and is a sign of strength, now. And so I would say acknowledge that you're in this place, and then try to make a decision, going back to choice, saying that I want to be able to serve somebody else, and through service you could connect. And that's how I met a lot of the people, like, growing up, immigrant parents and everything else like that. We didn't have connections and everything, but I would serve. I would be active parts in charities and fundraisers, and allowed me to connect and get out of my own mind and my own heart and my own fears when I was, going through my, challenges like everybody has. So I would say seek community, that there are people out there that you fit in with. For me, I was looking for my X-Men, for people that were just kind of little weird and different and little mutants, like myself. But a lot of people are, feeling like this is Endgame, and I'm not saying we have to, you have to be the Hulk and Iron Man and the Scarlet Witch, but I would say, make a decision to connect with people, and it's that simple, but it's that difficult sometimes too. So I'll acknowledge that also as well. It's tough, especially when it's family and friends, because they're acting a certain way, and sometimes their intent is positive, but they can be sincerely wrong with how they're approaching things, and so it's a big challenge right now. And I think now more than ever, it's about creating your own team. TEAM, together everyone achieves more, right? Together everyone achieves miracles, and then, and not to overthinking is good, but overthinking it and wanting to be perfect is not good. So my thought always when it comes to these things are, what are small little things we could do? Just little by little, a little can become a lot.
Yeah. These are all, again, these 6 C's that you took us through,
Yeah.
these are all really powerful strategies for rising above fear. Fear is going to happen. That's a natural part where our systems are wired up to engage with it. But we don't live in a time of a lot of rational fear. A lot of our creature comforts are met. And there's a lot of time for us to think about things. Endless, limitless, and the way that we think about things is going to really create the definition of our view of life or our experience of life. And so, this is so valuable. And really quickly, I want to point back to this first one, clarity. If you can take it upon yourself right now to really identify what matters most to you and use that as your North Star, even during times of fear, if there's fear swirling around, even if you experience fear, that's going to guide you to be able to traverse through fear, to supersede it, to rise above it. Just getting clarity on what matters to you, what is most important to you in your life.
Yeah.
So
what are you going to fight for? Who are you going to stand with? And if people haven't found those things, maybe it's also feeling like if you can't always identify the things you want most, think about the things that you want, that you hate, and it's usually the opposite of that also as well. And who's counting on you to be able to show up, because that purpose will give you strength. In Limitless, we talked about in a previous episode on your show, the Limitless Model, and I want to reintroduce that in the conversation. There are 3 elements that limit us, and also these are the same 3 forces that will unlimit us. But I wanted to go through the model really quickly because it's a framework that can be used, a lens to look at fear, but it's also a framework of looking at liberating yourself out of fear and going into confidence or courage. And so, and I want to talk to you about it because I want to ask some questions for you. And I know you've been on my show a number of times. We've talked about sleep, we've talked about energy, we've talked about food and different exercise, all different to upgrade your brain, right? What I want to ask you is, so I want everyone, let's do a little exercise here. I want everyone to think about an area of your life where you feel fear or you feel like stuck. Right, because that's what fear does. It immobilizes you, right? You're in flee or you're in freeze mode, right? And Limitless is not about being perfect. It's about advancing and progressing, and that's what we want to do, right? That's why we want our freedom to be able to be, do, have, share, do the things like that are important to us. And so, think about an area, everyone, in your life where you feel like you're not advancing. Maybe fear is holding you back in that area, or you feel like you're in a box, and because where we become more limitless is playing and practicing, at the edge of those limits, right? But going back to this, like, where do you feel like you're not making progress? Where do you feel like you're in a box? Maybe it's in your career. Maybe it's in your education. Maybe it's in your impact. Maybe it's in your emotional happiness. Maybe you feel like you're a little stuck. You're not progressing there, or your spirituality, your income, or wherever, your health. Now, that box by definition is 3-dimensional. Right? So 3 forces keep you in that box. These are the same 3 forces that will liberate you out of that box. So if it's safe to do so, you're not driving or working out, take a piece of paper, everyone. And if you don't, just imagine in your head. I want everyone to draw a Venn diagram. A Venn diagram is just 3 intersecting circles, like Mickey Mouse's ears that are overlapping, and a face. And I'm going to just give this as a 2-minute review, and then I'm going to turn this into, kind of like a framework for getting out of fear. So 3 intersecting circles. Now, these are the 3 M's that represent the 3 forces and that dimensions that hold that box together, that keep you stuck. So where do you feel like you're stuck? I did a podcast episode on getting unstuck recently, and I opened up with this anecdote where a truck driver is not paying attention, and and all of a sudden, because like in life when we don't pay attention, he goes underneath a bridge and doesn't realize the bridge is hanging too low, and the truck gets stuck, right? And then what do you do when you get stuck? You work harder. So he pushes on the gas. And the more he pushes on the gas, the more stuck he gets. Then he realizes that. So he goes in reverse. And by that time, he's really, really stuck and can't get out. And so, over time, you can imagine all this traffic building behind him because he's blocking them in the entrance there. And, and then crowds start gathering, emergency vehicles start getting there. And they start pushing the truck in. Nothing happens. They start pulling it out. Nothing happens. And they've concluded in their mind the only way to get this out of this emergency, a state of emergency, is to blow the truck up. Right. and then take the pieces out because they have to. They have no choice. That's what adults think, right? They have a certain paradigm of blowing stuff up, going to war with it, right? And but there's a child in the crowd, and the child's looking at us like, and the child shouts out, like this 7-year-old boy, why don't you just deflate the tires? And all of a sudden they do, and then what happens? Comes down, and they're able to kind of pull the truck out. And in my mind, that's kind of interesting because that child has doesn't have the same fears or misunderstandings of something that's presented. It's kind of like the elusive obvious. Like, even, part of that, like going through and just doubling down on the things in nature that can make you healthy and resilient. So it's amazing for your immune system and things like that. So going back to here, the 3 circles, I'm going to give you the 3 M's. That's kind of like the elusive obvious. These are 3 areas that we are limited in, and it creates fear, and it could also unlock huge amounts of confidence and certainty. The last M I'm going to give you on the bottom, Mickey Mouse's face, is the methods. And these can be methods for health, methods for getting super fit, right? Methods for investing, methods for crypto, methods for speed reading, methods for remembering names, right? So there are a lot of methods out there. They're very abundant. We live in an age where we have unfeathered access to the world's information, right? On podcasts, on YouTube, and it's all free, right? So a lot of people know the methods, but they're still stuck in that box. So what keeps them stuck in that box? People could say fear, but let's break it down into categories. The first circle is your mindset. So the first circle is your mindset. And I'm going to define mindset as your set of assumptions and attitudes you have about something. Your attitudes and assumptions about something. In the book Limitless, it's broken down into 3 sections: mindset, the second one, and then methods. Mindset is, I talk about lies. And this is kind of interesting because we can use this model for a lot of things. These are the lies to learning. And a lie for me, limited idea entertained. That's what LIE stands for. Everything's an acronym. It's a limited idea entertained. So it's like one of the lies is that, criticism matters, right? Other people's opinions and expectations, matter. And the truth is that's not true, right? It's just an idea we're entertaining. It's a limited idea that we're entertaining. The truth is, if you live your life with, fueled by other people's expectations and their opinions, then we're going to run out of gas. And that's the truth, right? Like in there, we talk about a lie that genius is born, when I believe genius is built, right? But if you believe genius is born, you either have a good memory or you don't have a good memory, then you can learn a great method on how to remember names, and you're still stuck in that box because your mindset says you can't remember this stuff. Well, there's mindset around a lot of things, around health, around wellness. There's beliefs, because all behavior is belief driven, around what's possible, and your attitudes around things matter, and that could create fear, right? And so fear is a formula of mindset, and then the second M, and then the methods that allows you to do it. And so my thing is, like, if you zone in on these circles, then you know where you could actually liberate yourself. So as an example, what would you say are some fundamental beliefs about health and wellness, this area that you think, some of the principles to the Model Health Show, to the nature of your work, maybe some beliefs that that for you is kind of like the elusive obvious, like that child deflating the thing, but to most of the population, it's just they haven't accepted that, and if they did, it would it would totally give a 180 on their health or their perception on fear. Yeah. So what were some of those ideas or thoughts or beliefs, attitudes?
Sure. That health isn't just one thing. Me being a nutritionist and taking the nutritional science classes when I'm in college, I believe that this is really, you are what you eat. And so that's this foundational tenet. And if you get the food right, you can get everything right. And obviously it's a big, big pillar, but it's just one part of the equation of what constitutes health. So that's what we strive to do here with the show, is to provide models of all the different pillars that constitute health. So one of those is food. Another one is movement. Another one is sleep.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know how important this is. And another one of these is community.
Yeah.
Incredibly important. I mean, I don't think that there's anything more influential over your success in life, your health,
Your longevity.
than your relationships. I just don't see it in the physical world, right? And then the other part of that is your mindset. Everything going on upstairs is it is the master controller, because it influences everything else. So if you are missing out on one of these pillars, your stability is going to be very shaky, especially this ultimate pillar. This is really the kickstand. If you're going to sit things down and even pause for a moment, if your mind isn't right, then you're not going to be right.
And I'm listening to you speak, and it's interesting because when you talk about, sleep, and you talk about exercise, and you talk about community, underlining, there's a meta belief above that says, that you have influence on your health. Right? You believe it. Otherwise, so you could control certain things of what you're feeding your body, how you're moving your body, how you're interacting with other bodies. Right? And I don't think that's a widely held belief with some people who might be experiencing that. Like, if they have a belief, like, I don't have control over my health. Right? Then they can learn methods from listening to a podcast and a book, and they're going to still think, oh, I'm either born healthy or it's genetics. You know what I mean? And so, going deep into that mindset, your attitudes, assumptions about pandemics, your attitudes and assumptions and beliefs about, treatments, your attitudes, assumptions about, about fear and everything. And so the nature of the conversation is to spawn new questions to people listening, just saying, like, when you hear these things, is that really true? Or is it BS? Belief systems, right? And so to evaluate those belief systems, because, we don't have to believe everything we think, right? And the challenge is a lot of those thoughts, they say, what do we have, 50, 70,000 thoughts a day? 95% of those thoughts are the same thoughts we had yesterday. So how do we have a new healing or a new level of transformation or spontaneity if we're the same thoughts, because the same thoughts lead to the same behaviors, which lead to the same experiences, which leads to the same feelings, and those feelings feed those thoughts again, right? And so we're going back to life is a C between B and D, choice. You have choices on what to think. You have choices on from there, how to act. You have choices from there to what the experience means. Like, if anyone's ever read Man's Search for Meaning, like right now people could say this is the worst time ever, and that's their experience of it, or they could say, hey, this is an opportunity for us to all step up as a nature, as a nation, as a world, right? And we also have choice on how to feel. That we don't have to feel a certain way just because, it's expected of us. And so that's mindset. And then the last M, you have mindset and methods that I would say that limits us, that could keep us in fear, is motivation. And motivation, I talk about that as somebody suffers from procrastination and they're not taking action, or if you need to motivate somebody else because they're procrastinating, it's three elements that I feel are like the game. And the formula for limitless motivation is P times E times S3. And I want everyone to meditate on this. This is the formula for limitless motivation, right? P times E times S3. And this has just been my experience of field testing this for 30 years, as a brain coach, and seeing a lot of people know what to do. They know the methods, but common sense is not common practice. And they're not doing it. And people know they should be prioritizing their sleep. People know they should be eating well. People know they should be moving more, right? Feeding their mind and reading books. But, few people do it because their mindset or their motivation. So motivation, very quickly. Let's say we want to motivate somebody to do something that they're fearful for, right? So maybe they're even fearful to go to work to exercise, right? Because, of what that will mean, and that's keeping them from progressing. And I feel like the fears that we don't address become the limits of our life, And so the P stands for purpose, all right? Purpose. A sense of purpose will get you out of fear. as we've talked about, who's counting on us. I remember I saw somebody recently that I knew, I've known for a long time, not a friend, but like an acquaintance. And I didn't recognize him because, as context, this person, this man was very unhealthy, extremely unhealthy. And family and friends, we'd all give him advice, just say, hey, you might want to stop doing this, maybe start doing a little of this. And very, very stubborn, right? And took pride in being, in doing his thing. Anyway, I see him on the street. He ends up having a heart attack, almost dying, and he still goes back to his old lifestyle. So that's how in his identity is, his mindset. Anyway, I see him on the street years later, and I didn't even recognize him because this guy was looked so much younger. He was picture perfect, like a really healthy guy. And I was like, is that you? I was like, yeah. It's like, and I was like, what happened? No, it was like, you look amazing. He's like, oh, I started doing this and this. I stopped doing this. I'm like, hey, we've been telling you for years to get on this program, right? And I was like, what happened, right? He's like, I came back one day from a business trip, and my daughter, my pride and joy, was hysterical. I mean, she just would not stop crying, and I found out that she had a nightmare that I died, and I wasn't there for her, and then immediately he found purpose, right? And here's the thing with purpose, the P in motivation, it's not intellectual. A lot of people know they should be doing something, but they're not doing it. It has to go from your head to your heart. Then it'll go to your hands. That's the formula, right? You could have a goal in your head, but if you're not acting with your hands, check in with the second H, which is your heart. So you need to feel purpose. So just like if you're to work out, what are the rewards that will come from it? And also, maybe that doesn't motivate you. What's going to happen if you don't? Right? So that's purpose. The E, and you're the master at this, is energy. It's just energy, because you know what? Some people are not motivated because they lack energy. Right? If you haven't slept in 3 nights because you're so scared of what's going on, in the world, and, everything else, you're watching social media at 1:00 and you're just addicted, to that process, then you're not going to, I think it was General Patton that said, fatigue will make a coward of us all, right? When we're tired, we're not gonna have the courage to talk to the person we want to talk to, or to give that speech, or give that toast at a wedding, or do the things that will really advance our life. And so everything you talk about, right, from foods to stress management to exercise to sleep, to get rid of those energy vampires in our life. We talk all about brain energy and Limitless, how to get over mental fatigue and fog. But, you need to increase the energy. So leaders or readers, right? If you're not reading each day and you should be doing that, then, maybe it's because you ate a big processed meal and you're in a food coma, right? And you're not motivated, and energy is a big deal because fear suppresses our energy, right? It takes a huge amount of energy in your nervous system to be scared and terrified, right? With all and when you're going to fight or flight, think about it, all the energy goes, to your ability to run or to fight. Your heart rate goes up, your breathing goes up, you're sending, energy into your extremities. It's going away from your digestion. It's going away from your immune system, right? Because that's not, really important right there at the moment. But over time, chronic fear, what's that cost to your immune system? What's that cost to your digestive, system also as well. So going back to energy, optimize that energy. And then finally, the S3, you could have limitless purpose for something. You could have, limitless energy and still be, not take action, because the ultimate evidence that somebody has courage or motivation is that they do something. And I would say it's S3. S3 for me stands for small, simple steps. And just a reminder that sometimes this thing is so intimidating in life, the things that we're facing or the goals that we set, and a confused mind doesn't do anything. I don't know, some people, with all the misinformation that's out there and everything, some people are so confused and they're immobilized, right? And then, I love it because in your conversation, you're offering people small, simple steps, right? And how do you find small, simple steps? Really easy. Questions are always the answer. What is the tiniest action I could take right now that will give me progress towards this goal where I cannot fail, right? And that's so neat, because it's okay, if I have to take a test, I feel fearful of the test, or give that talk, to my team or have that difficult conversation, how can you break it down into something that's manageable, that's bite-sized, that's digestible? Because it's not intimidating. You're not fearful of it, right? It's, like maybe working out, and doing your workouts, and I like following you, like all your family's workouts, which are amazing and inspiring, but some people see that maybe that's too big in their minds. So maybe a small, simple step is, let's put on our running shoes. Let's do something small, like maybe reading. In my case, reading a book a week, maybe 45 minutes a day for the average reader is too intimidating for someone who's not done it. Maybe opening up the book is a small, simple step, or reading one line in the book, right? Because nobody's going to stop there. And if you want to motivate somebody else, not just yourself, with your kids, maybe it's clean the room. They can't do that. Maybe putting one sock in the hamper, right? Or maybe they don't floss their teeth. Maybe they floss one tooth, right? Inch by inch, it's a cinch. Yard by yard, it's way too hard. And these little things add up to big things, right? And it's just important to acknowledge that everyone that looks like, that's a champion, they started, they were once an amateur, right? Every pro is once, every expert was once a beginner also as well. Consistency compounds. So break it down into small, simple steps. So those are the 3 keys to becoming limitless in any area of your life. We need to look in and have the self-awareness, right, to look at our mindset, our motivation, and the methods we're using. Because some people could have all the great mindset, everything is possible, they deserve it, they're capable of it, they could have limitless motivation, but they could be using old methods for health, or old methods for starting a business today, or old methods for reading and studying and memorizing, right? You have to upgrade your methods. So my main thing with everybody listening when we're talking about fear is do not downgrade your dreams. People are shrinking, right? That's not what we need to be doing. Do not downgrade your dreams to meet this current situation. Upgrade your mindset, upgrade the motivation, upgrade the methods you're using to be able to meet those big dreams.
Jim, you just, of the 6 C's, the contribution today, you just absolutely over-delivered. Thank you so much, man. I'm just teeming with ideas and inspiration, and I hope that everybody really got a lot of value out of this, and I hope that they took notes. And by the way, we've known each other, I think maybe like 12 years now, man. It's time. Bananas.
Yeah.
And to have somebody like you in my life, and also we're going to put your past episodes in the show notes for everybody. If they happen to just be tuning in for the first time, he's shared so much on improving your memory, on speed reading, on just being able to think faster and more effectively, and what can be better and more useful at a time like that. So definitely dive into the archives with Jim
We
Kwik.
did one episode on thinking styles and how to make good decisions that I think everyone should, because that's the other thing with all the digital deluge, and digital deduction, where everyone, you don't like outsource the thinking to media and marketing and everything else. Like, we have to be able to embrace our ability to critically think, to use logic, use basic math. Again, sometimes, fear would take a lot of our energy, so people feel tired and they don't want to do those things. But I think now more than ever. But dude, I appreciate you. I remember when you started this podcast, you were one of the people that inspired us to do our podcast also as well. And yeah, can I challenge everyone to do something?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think everyone should take a screenshot wherever they're watching this or listening to this, and whatever platform it is, and tag Shawn, tag myself at Jim Kwik, KWIK, and maybe just share one thing. Like I think everything has to lead to action. Like you wanna act like a person of thought, but you also want to think like a person of action all the time. So what's one thing you could do after listening to this, that can that can help put more courage into the system, put more energy, more purpose, right? Maybe one little thing, because here's the thing. I believe the treasure we seek is hidden in the things we're avoiding, the things that we're scared of, right? So what's one little small, simple step that we could go and kind of like expand and get out of that box, so we could come out of that cocoon and, as that beautiful butterfly and soar to new heights, But it's a real privilege to be back on the show, so I want to thank you and the team for the work you do. You're a real inspiring force of nature. You're an unstoppable force for good, buddy. So
thank you, man. I feel the same about you. And take Jim up on his challenge.
Yes.
Take a screenshot of this episode. You're watching on YouTube. Take a shot of your screen and take him up on his challenge. Tag me. I'm at Shawn Model. Tag Jim at Jim Kwik. Real name, KWIK.
Yeah.
Even my son Braden, who's met you before, he was like, why is his name Jim Kwik?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, B, first of all, this is his real name. And it's one of those things where it's like it's destined. You know, your name has that destiny in it. You know, you teach people literally how to traverse things faster, you know, and it's just such a gift. So
Thank you.
so grateful to have you in my life. And again, everybody, take him up on his challenge. And Jim, please let everybody know where they can connect with you more. Tell them about your podcast and your book.
If you like podcasts, our podcasts are only 15, 20 minutes long. How to remember names, how to read faster, how to give a speech without notes, how to memorize your brain foods. We've had Shawn on a number of times, probably one of most on our show. And all the links actually are right on my Instagram profile. We have all the free stuff. I have a video there where I could actually take people for free. I take them out of the audience. I put them on stage, show you how to remember their names if you have a fear of meeting new people and remembering their names. We have a speed reading masterclass on that link where it's absolutely free. Just bring a book. I'll show you how to double your reading speed. But yeah, I mean, basically, because I grew up with the challenges with the brain, I want to build better, brighter brains. No brain left behind. You know, I've said this before on your show, but I believe we're all on this path to realize and reveal our fullest potential. And I think the goal is we keep showing up for each other and for ourselves until we're introduced. So thank you.
Thank you, man. One of the Avengers right here in the studio today, the one and only Jim Kwik. Hey, if you like this video, make sure to check out this video right here.
Why do people not do what they know they should do? You know, why aren't they making progress? Why isn't common sense common practice? Well, you know, everyone knows they should eat right. Everyone knows that they should move and exercise and prioritize their sleep and read every day and they do their journaling, but why aren't they doing that consistently?